Good afternoon. Welcome to ELL Plus with me, Tom Parker.
And me, Puja Mazumder. In this week's programme, a royal appointment. The Duchess of Cambridge visits a charity in Forest Hill.
So I think having somebody like Kate, you know, a young member of the royal family, sort of supporting them, actually will give them a lot more publicity.
The Queer History Fair returns to Lewisham for the second year running. The event looks at the history of the LGBTQ+ community.
Cycling safety, winter's year, and the Hackney Council is handing out 2,000 free bike lights to cyclists.
The Duchess of Cambridge came to Forest Hill to mark the 150th anniversary of the locally based Family Action charity. Family Action provides support to vulnerable children and families. Asa Hussain has more.
This was a historic visit for this community, made by the young Royal Duchess. She was welcomed by the crowds gathered to see her. She was hosted by David Holmes, Family Action's chief executive, where she met with the young carers, volunteers and families.
Very, very exciting. I believe it's for the first time, so we're all very excited to come.
I don't think they promote themselves enough, so I think having somebody like Kate, you know, a young member of the royal family, sort of supporting them.
The visit marks the 150th anniversary for Family Action. The charity supports around 45,000 families a year across Britain.
A special moment today for the Forest Hill community. The Duchess of Cambridge came all the way to Family Action to spend time with workers, families and volunteers.
The Duchess opened a new helpline for children and parents in need. It was a royal visit that Forest Hill residents hope to have a lasting impact on their community.
We're now going live to our correspondent in the field, Humayun Nazir, who's been finding out what people on the Goldsmiths campus think about the royal family. Humayun.
Hi. Earlier today, we went out and asked people what they think about the significance of the royal family in the 21st century.
Right, I do not necessarily find the royals interesting or relevant to life in the 21st century.
I'm not a big believer in the royal family in terms of their significance to the country, but I think as I'm getting older, I'm realising that they have some kind of form of special place within the imagination of people within the country.
I mean, I'm not that bothered by them. I don't really have an opinion of them. I think they just exist and, like, I don't know, there's something maybe necessary to our society.
I think for the UK, it's nice to have a royal family so we have something consistent, and I think that things like Harry and Meghan's baby and things like that are things that people have to look forward to, and it's quite nice to kind of bring the country together.
My favourite royal is the Queen, and what I like about her is that she keeps her mouth shut. She's kind of the head of state, so she's above all this grubby politics. So I think it's actually quite helpful to have someone who's above the fray of politics that we can look up to as a symbol of the nation. And she never lets what she really thinks out. And I think that is the mistake that some of the younger royals are making sometimes.
Humayun, it seems that there's a lot of negativity coming there, but the royals do a lot for the country, don't they? They bring in a fair amount of money each year. What's the story there?
That's right, Tom. There are, of course, some people who think royal family costs too much money. But if you look at the stats, last year alone, they brought in 330 million, of which 75% was paid to government as tax. It seems like the message is not going to the people clearly that how they are spending the money or how they get the money. But it seems like people don't find the royal that good. And especially the younger generation, they think it's like not very significant for them. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Humayun.
The Queer History Fair has returned to Lewisham for the second year in a row. The event took place at Goldsmiths College, where the organisers aim to tell the story of LGBTQ+ community. They want to give people a deeper insight into the origins of the movement. Irina Bordbar reports.
The Queer History Fair brought together museums, archives, activists and volunteers who are passionate about the LGBTQ movement, which survived many centuries of persecution.
I chose to volunteer because I like to shed light on what's hidden or what hasn't been digged into, and for personal reasons. I don't know, I like queer, I feel queer, and I want to know more about queer.
People like Stefan, who works with archives in the Bishopsgate Institute, helped to bring back untold stories of queer Britain from decades ago.
There are obvious homosexuals, as the Sunday Mirror describes, those who dye their hair, touch up their lips and walk with a gay little wiggle. They could be spotted by one-eyed Jack on a foggy day in the Blackwall Tunnel. Yeah, not exactly accurate, but there we go. And stuff like this. So it's quite funny now we look back on it, but you imagine in 1963 if you were a gay man, this was obviously quite scary.
But there were setbacks even in recent history, like Section 28, which was abolished only 16 years ago.
Section 28 prohibited UK authorities from so-called promoting homosexuality, preventing councils from spending money on educational materials and projects related to LGBT community. The removal of this section, which was seen by many people as a deeply offensive law, has been described by movement leaders as triumph of 21st century tolerance over 19th century prejudice.
The law is gone, but not forgotten. The organizers reminded people just how much queer history work has been done.
That demonstrates just how much has changed, that would not have been possible between 1988 and when the Section 28 was repealed. So it's there historically, and amazing that we moved on.
The event was held in the run-up to LGBTQ History Month in February. Irina, Bordbar, East London Lines.
And now with our local news, Cheolan, Jeong.
Crystal Palace Football Club is opening its doors to homeless people over the winter. The club will turn a lounge at the Selhurst Park Stadium into a temporary overnight shelter when night temperature drops below freezing. Croydon is the 10th worst London borough for homelessness. There were 234 love sleepers in Croydon in 2017 and 18. The club is working with Croydon Council to provide the bed, a hot evening meal, breakfast and washing facilities. London Assembly member Janet Arnold has announced that she won't be standing for re-election after serving for nearly 20 years. However, she will keep trying to deal with political issues to help the community. Before being elected to City Hall, Arnold was a councillor in Islington for 8 years. In 2006, Ahmad led a campaign for smoke-free London, which made smoking in enclosed spaces illegal. Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, visited the Jewish Centre in Stepney, an area famous for its vibrant Jewish community. Camilla joined the supporters of the centre in the middle of the dance floor. The Brenner Center is celebrating its 80th anniversary. The Duchess described the center as one of the most uplifting she had ever been to. Holocaust Memorial Day takes place this Sunday at the Broadway Theatre in Catford. Local school children will perform drama, dance, poems, and speeches related to this year's theme, Torn from Home. The chair of the Holocaust Committee, the Mayoress of Lewisham, and the recently arrived refugees will share their experiences with audiences. That's all for Borough News today.
Thank you, Cheolan.
Up next, we bring you the latest initiative to help cyclists stay safe in Hackney.
Stay with us on ELL Plus News. For all the brave cyclists of London, winter's here. But this shouldn't stop you from getting some exercise outdoors. Hackney Council has come up with a great initiative of giving away 2,000 free bike rides to cyclists in the borough. I went to Hackney Council to find out more.
Free bicycle lights for cyclists.
The Hackney Cycling Campaign is aimed at encouraging people to keep on cycling during the colder and darker months. The lights will be handed out by volunteers from the Hackney Cycling Campaign throughout January. Volunteers will be giving them to anyone they see riding without a light. This is a series of pop-up giveaways hosted by the Hackney social enterprise Carry Me Bikes.
And really, it's just an initiative to keep people safe while they're cycling. Hackney is very concerned and keen for people to cycle, but also to stay safe while they're doing it. So the idea of giving people lights, it means we interact with them. It's a very good gesture by the council, and it's also promoting a mechanical pit stop.
I think it's great. It's a really good initiative. I see often a lot of cyclists without lights. I mostly have them, but at the moment it's light, so I haven't got them. But I think it's a great scheme.
I think it's really cool. I actually didn't have lights on my bike, so I was not riding it at night time. So this is great. Yeah, it's a really good idea.
People that don't have lights on their bikes.
Following these simple tips can help you get the most out of cycling this winter. Lights, white at the front and red at the back. Make sure they can be seen by others. Reflectors, required by law on all bikes built since 1990. Reflective clothing, wear something with reflective stripes after dark and bright clothing during the day. Tires, replace your tires if they look worn and watch out for slippery leaves on the road. The pit stop hosted by Hackney Council will be happening at Lane Martello Street between 4 to 7 p.m. on 25th of January. Cycling need not be a chore. In fact, it can be a great way to keep active. Puja Mazumder reporting for East London Lines.
A survey of posts on Twitter has put Croydon as the second most stressed borough in London. British health tech company Babylon Health analysed Twitter posts from leading cities across the UK and America. Joining me in the studio is Professor Marion Franklin, who is Professor of Global Media and Politics at Goldsmiths. Professor Franklin, thank you very much for joining us. What's interesting about this report is that it's a social media platform analysing people's stress levels when they're using social media, yet we often hear that social media is a perpetrator of stress and anxiety. So what can we glean from this?
Well, I guess it's a bit like the fox and the chicken coop analogy. It just shows you just how much leverage these companies can make on monitoring their own activities by which they use citizens to make money from them. So I'm not surprised. It doesn't surprise me, but it is striking that a social media company is talking about supposedly the stress it causes as a social media company. But that's the world we live in.
And I suppose another thing is that we often don't put our true selves out on social media. So when there are posts being analysed where someone is supposedly stressed, I mean, how much is this joking and how much is this performance?
Well, this is a good point, actually. I think we put something of ourselves always in writing or in photos, in any form. It's not an either or. So, yeah, it's all about, should we take people quite literally? And you're absolutely right. Is there any ways that this company can understand irony or sarcasm? However, it depends whether they're using an artificial a form of computing to do the analysis. And that's perhaps for the future an interesting moment. They might be experimenting.
Well, that's it. That really is what's the future of our interaction as a culture and a society with technology, with social media. You know, it's sometimes used for good and sometimes used for bad.
Well, I think it's all to do with the fact that it isn't in itself separate from who we are and where we live. It's the way we use it, but also the way it uses us. And media and technologies use us because they're designed to do certain things. So it's a relationship. So in a sense, we're also responsible for our own stress. So we're also responsible for relieving our own stress. So perhaps we could consider turning things off, shutting things down, and start listening in other ways, as well as enjoy our platforms.
Thank you, Professor Franklin, for joining us in the studio.
Thank you.
As the UK government negotiates a new relationship with the EU, it is likely that the rules will affect the freedom to live, work and do business. Product and environmental standards in the architect and construction fields will also change. The representative from HTA Design Agency gave us a short overview of this.
Brexit brings its own fears from my perspective, because there is concern about whether we are developing the right infrastructure in terms of the right amount of housing in the right places. There are concerns about other large sectors such as banking or finance or investment, moving their business out of not just London but the UK in general. But I don't feel like there's a general concern about people not being able to enter the industry. We've heard about the revision of population statistics could go down rather than up, result in more people moving out of London or moving out of the UK. I know that following Brexit, a lot of people from Europe were very concerned about racism and how British people felt about them. And there was concern that some people were worried about how people would perceive them, and that might encourage them to leave. But that's more of that's outside of our industry, if you know what I mean. But it's a concern that could result in there being less of a need.
Now for this week's sports news, here is Mansoor Ahmad.
Thank you. The Akila Martial Arts Taekwondo Club in Lewisham says it is taking 10 of its members to an international competition in Germany later this year. The club opened 6 years ago and has won multiple team trophies. So far it has created 4 national champions and 2 European champions. The club also has 3 students competing with the Great Britain national team. According to the FA, Wayne Hennessy has been charged for making Nazir salute. The Crystal Palace goalkeeper has been shown on social media in a picture doing the abusive gesture. Hennessy has until 31st of January to respond to the charge. That's all for sport.
Thank you, Mansoor. That's it for now. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next week.